My name is Lyle Murphy, the founder of the Alternative to Med Center. And today we're going to be talking about an important topic. What is protracted withdrawal? First thing we should talk about is what is acute withdrawal. So acute withdrawal is you've been taking a drug, medication, or substance, and when you stop that medication or substance, you go into withdrawal from the dependence you had on it and you no longer have it. Usually this has a physical component. You might get diarrhea, you might get anxiety, depending on what the drug is. If it's a stimulant, you might get tired, cranky, agitated, and that usually happens right about the point where the half-life of the medication, in other words, if it's methamphetamine, it might be 24 hours. If it's marijuana, it might be 3 days. If it's alcohol, it might be a matter of 4 hours. That's when you start to go into the heavy part of the acute withdrawal, and it's usually the most intense phase. And depending on the substance, it can be a number of hours, days, or even weeks. What is post-acute withdrawal? Well, post-acute withdrawal is what happens after that. So if it's alcohol, you may, for a week or two or a month, depending on how long you've been drinking, even longer than that, you might have symptoms of being sort of mushy-brained, having an inability to focus, cranky, sort of up and down in your moods, and those are the post-acute withdrawal symptoms you might experience with alcohol. For opiates, you might be emotionally exacerbated. You might be very sensitive to other people's emotions as you're starting to calm down and rebuild your own opiate receptors to help you with those sorts of things. Now, for antidepressants, let's say, or for benzodiazepines, your body might be trying to build up more serotonin naturally or help with your own inhibitory side of your neurochemistry during the first few days, weeks, or months after you stop these medications. Now, there's a special brand of post-acute withdrawal, and that leads us to our next question: what is protracted withdrawal? So this is where the more acute symptoms, in other words, the active withdrawal, persists much longer than the active withdrawal should. So let's say a person is on Cymbalta and they go from 20 milligrams down to 10 milligrams, and they're not readjusting after a couple of weeks. They're actually feeling like it might even be getting worse as they're coming off the medication over time. Instead of the withdrawal symptoms starting to decrease, after a week or two, their withdrawal symptoms may actually be even increasing. This phenomenon is called protracted withdrawal, and it's a special puncher in the nose kind of calling card from doing these medications, and unfortunately people in these sort of demographic tend to suffer a lot. Next question: is dizziness a withdrawal symptom? That depends on the person and the medication that we're talking about, but yes, dizziness and unstable gait is very common. Holding your posture and your head level to the horizon takes a few different neurochemicals to balance all of that, and those type of unsteadinesses may be a common feature of most brands of withdrawal. Do withdrawals come in waves? Yes, if you're one of the lucky people. So withdrawal may look like there's a rush of whatever the withdrawal symptom, and it lasts for a while, and then maybe it settles down a little bit and you get another rush of it. That is your body sort of trying to readjust to being without the chemical or substance. Kind of like when you start a hose, if there's air in it, it might spit out a little water and then it goes back to air and it spits out a little water. It's that same sort of how your neurochemistry is trying to make some corrections, and it's not used to making those corrections, so it may overcorrect it this way or may overcorrect it this way while it's trying to find balance. Waves are much better in withdrawal than something that is constant, especially something that is constant and continuing to escalate during the withdrawal process. How is withdrawal different from other predictors of relapse? Most people want to tend to avoid withdrawal and the symptoms that go with withdrawal, so they will tend to want to reinstate the medication. We feel that even after withdrawal, or even maybe before a person started a medication or substance, that they may have had a unique, or at least specific to them, type of addictive biochemistry that caused them to have those cravings in the first place and may tend to exist even after the substance is removed. So some people are just wound too tight, and they're the type of people that are going to want sedation. And some people are too sedated and feel too lackluster, those are the type of people that are going to crave stimulation. Or there's certain people who are very artistic and their emotional sensitivity causes them to be very thin-skinned to other people's emotions. They may be looking for some type of sedative or opiate to help buffer the amount of emotions they're picking up off other people. And so those situations may be gifts when they're in balance. Like, for instance, a person that's wound a little tight, they might be very attention to detail, but if they're out of balance, it can turn in on them and basically bite them and show up as unrelenting OCD. Same with the artist. The artist may be able to speak very poetically to emotions that they and other people may be feeling and have a beautiful way of articulating this that the world can feel. Unfortunately, once they become famous and all of the attention's on them, they may overfeel that attention and not be able to endure it and then turn towards sedatives. So some of these gifts, if they're not in balance, can turn into these addictive biochemistries that call us into certain directions. Are withdrawal symptoms permanent? For most people, the withdrawal symptoms are temporary. Of course, they may be left with that addictive biochemistry that they had in the first place, but for these protracted withdrawal people, this withdrawal tends to go on and on and on and on and on and on and on, and some people it can last months or even years. By and large, those people do eventually find relief. As kind of torturous the path might have been for them to get there, it does usually end up correcting, and people research the things that they need and get more in tune with what they should be doing and should not be doing, and eventually tend to get over it. What is benzodiazepine protracted withdrawal syndrome? Again, this is a person who feels like they're in a constant state of acute withdrawal, even after they've stopped the medication or have even reduced the medication to a certain level. There is a theory about this, particularly about benzodiazepines, that the benzodiazepine has mutated the receptor so that it is no longer able to really receive the naturally occurring GABA because the medication has damaged these receptors. And that actually might have some truth to it. However, what I've seen is that when people are cutting down a medication that is keeping their anxiety at bay, normally what should happen is they cut the medication, they have withdrawal, and they recalibrate and get through the withdrawal and are ready for their next taper or cut. But there's those people that get stuck along the way. They get down to a certain level and they can't go any farther. Well, if you think about your nervous system like a game of catch between, let's say, you and a friend, and you've got a baseball and you're just kind of lobbing it back and forth, you should be able to catch that with your bare hand without hurting your hand. This is an analogy to your nervous system when they're talking to another. I pitch you the excitatory neurochemical, you do something with it, and then you pitch it back to me so I can give it to you the next time. However, if suddenly I'm a Major League Baseball pitcher and I'm pitching a 100-mile-an-hour fastball, you're not going to be catching that with your bare hand, not very often. So that's where the person tends to put on a glove, which could be the benzo, so that they can catch that fast pitch. If the nervous system is neurotoxic, in other words, like when a pesticide poisons a pest, it dysregulates its excitatory nervous system to the point where it goes into overdrive. The insect goes into tetany because it can't downregulate and then ends up dying. These type of poisons poison our nervous system in the same way. So if you've got your nervous system pitching fastballs and you haven't dealt with that, that's one of the major mechanisms I feel for the protracted withdrawal, because you just get to a point where there's not enough of a glove. You've thinned the glove down enough to where that ball starts hurting again. And in reality, I feel like you need to get the pitcher to stop pitching such a fast ball and unpoison that person's nervous system enough where then they can be without the medication. And we have done that, and we have seen that, and we've seen people that have been in protracted withdrawal for years, and we unpoison them, and suddenly this medication that they were having, like shaving like little tiny bits off of, hoping to readjust and still not readjusting, falls away a lot easier because you've downregulated the nervous system and created a bit more balance. And then, of course, that glove isn't nearly as necessary. What are the benefits of holistic medication tapering and addiction treatment? Well, first off, most people on anti-anxiety medications that are legally prescribed do not consider themselves addicts, even if they're slightly abusing it. And we don't tend to refer to people in this situation, or any situation really, as addicts either. I mean, there are those few that they just are sort of garbage cans for every medication or drug you throw in front of them and tend to abuse things. Most people that are drawn towards a medication or a drug, they have that addictive biochemistry that pulls them in that direction in the first place. Then they become dependent or neuroadapted on that particular medication and then are struggling to get off of it. The majority of people have these genetic factors or lifestyle factors that have been a setup for them to have this addictive biochemistry that makes them feel like they need some sort of sedation. Adjusting those physiological factors through holistic means can actually shift these cravings. If it is the physiology that's causing the cravings, then really that needs to be addressed for any other therapy to be effective. So let's say, for instance, we are hypoglycemic. The alcohol we've been drinking is a liquid sugar that helps balance out these major blood sugar drops, which a major blood sugar drop can cause a lot of anxiety. It's like a red light and siren kind of 5-alarm fire in your brain, because literally your brain could die if you don't have enough glucose for your brain to run. So then you crave this thing that will immediately intercept that, which alcohol doesn't even need to be digested. It just goes through the walls of your stomach right into your bloodstream to pick up your blood sugar. If that's what's running the show, if you don't correct that, you're going to end up relapsing. It doesn't really matter what psychological or spiritual components are in your recovery program. That type of phenomenon defies your spiritual faith, your family background, your educational level, and that's why we see a lot of alcoholics that have a hypoglycemic underpinnings tend to relapse despite how good of a family they grew up in. There have been people who have had a traumatic loss that medicating may have been the compassionate thing to do at that time. If they are tapering off that medication in a slow and more pragmatic way than you would find in an acute detox setting, and they're applying these holistic methods that build up their neurochemistry and help prep them for those withdrawal steps, it can keep them from being re-traumatized just from the medication withdrawal themselves. That type of neurochemical support can actually make things a whole lot easier than trying to go at it without that type of support. That brings us to the end of our questions. I thank you very much for spending the time with us. Do know that anything that you've heard here really is just information. If you're planning on changing your medications or adding any type of supplements to your protocol, I do suggest that you consult with your prescriber or a naturopath if it's regarding the supplementation, and see if those things that you're considering are right for you. And feel free to share this information or video or any of our information with your prescriber for consideration. But don't take it upon yourself to change things based upon what you've heard from us, because honestly, we don't have a relationship with you and your situation could be very unique. If you do want to call us about your unique situation, please feel free to do that. You'll find a number somewhere on this page that you can get some more information about what it would be like to be an inpatient with us. And if that's not available to you, maybe get a referral to someone in your area that can help you. Thank you very much and have a good day or night.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. For information about Alternative to Med Center, give us a call at 888-984-9667.